everybody, and welcome to our Friday expert session. I'm super excited to be here, especially following up from our awesome midpoint meetup on Tuesday. It was great to see so many of you there and to get to meet you and a lot of your mentors in person. I don't know about you, but I felt such positive energy in that room, and I'm excited to bring that momentum and energy forward into the second half of this program. I'm MJ Durkin. If I haven't met you, I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at Tech United, and I'm very honored to be moderating our chat with a very special guest we have joining us today. So without further ado, I will introduce our amazing guest, Joanne Wilson, who is one of New York's most prolific early stage angel investors and the voice behind the very long-running Gotham Gal blog. Since 2008, she's backed well over 100 companies, including Food 52, Eater, Curb, Parachute Home, with a deep focus on female entrepreneurs. And she even co-founded the Women Entrepreneur Festival in New York. Joanne is a former operator across retail, media, and tech before she became an angel investor. Joanne Wilson, welcome to Uplift. Thank you so much for being here.
Sure, my pleasure.
I wanted to kick things off. So our cohort in Uplift is primarily early stage founders, female and minority founders, many of which are similar to you, former operators before becoming founders. Mm-hmm. You have backed well over 100 companies since 2008. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from an operator to one of the most prolific angel investors in New York?
Yeah, I mean, when I started investing in companies, I mean, it was the beginning of Web 2.0. And so it was a very different time. You could really be a generalist and invest in a variety of different companies. But the one thing that was clear to me is I kept hearing from so many female founders that we're not getting capital. And not only they were not getting capital, when they would go talk to people, the conversations were beyond, whereas like, oh, this is interesting. Let me go home and ask my wife. And so I really made it a decision to invest in female founders and Black and brown founders. Not that I don't have some white men in my portfolio, but I'll do, I lean towards that. I think that, it was just the right time at the right place.
Well, it's very much appreciated because the work that you have done is incredible and has moved the needle a lot, although there's still a lot of work to be done. We held an in-person meetup on Tuesday, and we had Shalisa McNeil, who's the founder of Freya, there, and we started off with some stats from Show Her the Money, the film, which starts off, unfortunately, with a stat that less than 2% of VC funding goes to female founders, and even less of that goes to Black and brown founders. And so angel investors in particular play a really important role in getting businesses off the ground, specifically those that are sometimes overlooked. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this group is first-time founders. So for founders who have never raised, can you explain what is angel investing and would a founder know when they're ready to raise versus maybe it's a little bit too soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely changed, but I would say now that it's multiple things. One is it's super important to show traction and to actually show that you're filling a void in the marketplace. That was not as relevant 15 years ago, but now it's extremely relevant. And so, I would get cold emails from people showing their deck, what they're doing, how they're going about it. And, if it struck my fancy, I would certainly meet with them. I think that the key here is don't reach out to people unless you are ready to make that leap. Because particularly in venture, it's very different. Is they might take you in to see you, tell you how great it is, definitely let's keep in touch, and then you're never going to get in that office again, right? And so your first step might be your only step. In regard to angels, I mean, the first round is really mostly friends and family, and then you can go out to people, and there are certainly angel groups. There's singular people that are doing this, but I think one of the things that has changed over the last decade, particularly because of organizations like Y Combinator out in San Francisco, is that they created these unhealthy valuations of I'm going out, I'm worth $20 million and I need to raise, $3.5 million. And the problem with that for an angel is there's no way to make money. Mm-hmm. And so, unless you're, you're not paying attention. So I had a thesis, right, which was I would put $50,000 in a company that was valued in a post valuation at $3 million. And so, I own at $5 million, sorry. So I would own 1%, right? And I would get a side letter saying that I was allowed to invest at every single round going forward, and keep my pro rata share. And I actually created a whole thing in the industry. Now everybody uses it. But what's interesting is that, $50,000, right? I was willing to lose that or having to write it off. But when you're talking about companies with their $20 million, and in order to have any significant stake, $200,000 and above is very difficult.
Mhm.
And, I would say to any person going out and raising, there are definitely people that you're just like, great, I'll take their money. They want to invest, terrific. I'll never talk to them again except through emails and telling people what I'm doing. Whereas others, there might be one or two that can very much help you, that are just as interested in your success as you are. And I think one of the things that I've told founders is once you've completed your round, you should send out an email every month which says, here's what I've accomplished, here's what's not happening well, and here are my asks. And you might be surprised to find out someone in your group of investors knows someone that you want to talk to. And so engage your investors and use them as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on a ton of really important parts in that response, which I want to unpack a few things. One, I heard the importance of going to the right at the right time to the right types of investors.
Very important.
Traction in having traction is an important part for angel investors. What do you mean when you say you need traction? Does this mean customers, revenue, interest? What types of signals are you looking for?
Yeah, I don't think revenue as important as it is stickiness, people that are using your product, people that come back and use your product again. I mean, certainly revenue is more important than it was years ago, depending on your product, of course. But I think you need to show that there's actually, you're filling something that no one else is doing.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so important to show differentiation in the market, especially with AI right now. There's a lot that has changed in the market, and there's a lot of duplication, and anybody can do anything, which is awesome. AI is the ultimate equalizer, and especially for founders that maybe don't have the same access as others, it
Yeah.
is incredible. But you also do need to show how you're different and how not anybody can just go vibe code your product in a weekend. I want to go back to also, you mentioned the importance of follow up with your investors, and I think you're pulling on important threads of building relationships with an investor.
Correct.
Often said that getting into an investor relationship is as important as a marriage. You're going to hopefully be working together for 10 plus years, and making sure that you're doing that with right people who are aligned with what you're doing is important, and probably one of the most important business decisions that founders will make. Can you talk about like the people side of investing? Of course, it sounds like you're open to cold intros and to cold outreach, but how do
I
you
was,
investor? You're a person too.
yeah, I mean, it's like I respond to anyone that emails me. I just think that it's very difficult being a founder and it's very difficult raising money. But the importance of maintaining those relations, certainly there were people that came in my office that I was like, this is never going to make it, or great idea, too bad it's yours, right? Because I could see there was no fire in their belly, and I don't want people to come in and show me their deck. I already saw their deck. That's why they're sitting in my office. What I want to do is I want to hear about, why did you build this business? Where are you coming from? What's your history? And why is there a carrot dangling in front of your nose with this absolute desire to build this business, and it's something you care about?
It's so important. All right, last one on this that I wanted to pull a thread on. You mentioned some technical investing terms like pro rata shares, post money valuation. Can you explain what those things mean to you as an investor and why they're important?
Yeah. So to me, the importance of pro rata share is, once I'm in, I own 1%, really easy to calculate. So if someone does another round, let's say they do a round at $10 million, right? 1% of $10 million is all that I would have to put into it in order to maintain that 1%. Because every time you do a round, people get diluted if they don't continue to put capital back into the business.
Like, and again, at the end of the day, you are an angel investor. You focused on specific types of entrepreneurs and types of businesses because of where your interests lie. But at the end of the day, as an angel investor, you're also looking for a return. And that's something important for people to be important. It's important to be aware of when you're engaging in these relationships. They are business relationships at the end of the day. I want to go back to our planned questions. Actually, I did want to mention, it is true that Joanne will answer any emails. I emailed you cold to this cohort, and I very much appreciate you agreeing to do this and spending your very busy day with us. Going back to how founders should even think about raising, how would you, if you were a founder, if you were going back into building companies, should they be thinking about how much to raise, their valuation, and how to structure a potential deal? What are the traps they should be watching out for, especially for newer founders?
Yeah, well, first of all, AI is changing everything, right? So the reality is that you can build a company and build 10 agents, and those people work for you, but they're free. And so that changes everything. People go out and they raise ridiculous amounts of capital. I don't think you need to really do that in most businesses. I think what you should be thinking about, what exactly do I need to raise, right? And if the answer is, in order to get to the next step in my business, based on the back-end technology, based on what I'm doing, whatever it may be, the number is $1 million. Let's just make that up, right? You really don't want to give more than 20% of your business away on the first round. And that might sound a lot, but the numbers work, because as your business grows and, maybe it's 20% every time, people get diluted, as well as there is always more stock to be issued to anyone within the company when the board decides, if you have a board, to do that. And so I actually call it the mensch thing, right? So if you're going to raise $1 million and you want to give away 20% of your business, well, then your valuation should only be at $5 million, right? Mm-hmm. Don't make your valuation so high that no one has any interest in it. I mean, I had a company, all these people came out of Etsy, the first generation, and they all built all these companies, and they thought their valuations were $15-20 million. I didn't touch these businesses. Fast forward, I kept up with one of them, particularly, great guy. And he came back to me and he said, I am running out of cash. I need $1.5 million of a bridge round, and none of my investors will come back in. And I said to him, did you do a safe note, which I really don't like, but on the other hand, there are pluses about it, or did you do an actual round? He's like, well, we actually did a safe note. I said, great. What I would do is go back, revalue that safe note to $5 million with the post valuation of 6.5, because you raised the first 1.5, make it all real, right? So it's actual, you own stock in that company. It's not just floating and you're waiting for, the legal documents to actually make everyone part of the business. And then I'll go back to all these people that invest in you, because I know them all, and we can now raise another $1.5 million. And the post of that will now be $8 million. And nobody will even question that, because of what you're doing. And sure enough, that's what happened. And that company is Just Works, which today is worth, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes, they are. Wow, incredible anecdote. That's crazy. You brought up two things I want to touch on really quickly. One, hot take. You are not a fan of safe notes. No. I saw Kennedy put up a quick definition of safes, but can you explain a safe note for the audience and explain why you don't like that?
Yeah, I don't particularly like them because I think they're about as good as the paper that's written on them. It doesn't really protect anyone, particularly an investor or even a founder. I think that when you do a round, you should be forced to figure out exactly the documents around a real round, that the people putting money in own stock, and it's not loosey-goosey, so that on the next round, all the paperwork's there, everything is tightened up.
Mhm.
It's important to build your business on a very solid legal foundation. Everything is built on a legal foundation. And by the way, there's nothing standard either. If you choose to build it a certain way with the legal documents back it up, that's fine too. Safe notes are easy ways to raise money. People do it all the time. And it's literally like signing a napkin. And so you don't really learn anything from it. You don't really learn about the law. You don't learn about the reality of any of this stuff. And if you continue piling safe notes on top of each other, and then someone comes in and says, I'm going to do a real round, you're a real company, and we're going to put $5 million into this thing. And you think, oh, okay, cool. Well, I did 20 here percent I gave away, then I gave away this. I'm going to own, when this is all over, 30% of the business. I'm just making this up. But what happens when you go back to the original and you actually execute on each step to become real stock, what you think you own is not what you own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
and that's the difference because it's real.
Yeah, and especially for this audience, a lot of founders are new and maybe aren't as well versed in some of these terms, and it's easy to give away a lot of your company without even realizing that that's what you're doing, and make it really difficult for it to be a desirable deal or an attractive deal for other investors down the line. And so I think this type of feedback and these anecdotes are super helpful to be aware of, thinking like the importance of thinking 2 and 3 steps down the road, instead of just thinking of this is money that I can take right now, which safe notes are. Like safe notes is that they allow you to move really fast. They allow you to get capital really quickly. It's simple agreement for future equity. It's emphasis on the simple, and they don't force you to think about the consequences of those decisions. The other thing I wanted to pull a thread on is you mentioned some of the difficulties of venture-backed companies, and venture is not for every type of company, especially when your goal is to retain 100% ownership. Can you talk a little bit about, and angel investing is obviously not the same as VC, but it's kind of it's like a first step towards VC. Can you talk through the types of companies that you think are great fits for VC versus those that would be better going through non-dilutive, bootstrap, maybe angel investor only, and stopping there? Like, how do you think about the best businesses to pursue venture funding?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing as, I remember a young woman that got into the venture business, and she raised money, and she was like, I'm going to do it so differently. I'm going to give out more stock and all this stuff. There's a reason these low numbers work, because these things take time and then they add up. In regards to venture is not, it became like a household name, and venture is not interested in putting money in businesses unless they have the ability to become multiples of hundreds of millions of dollars. That is how they exit, and that's how they pay money back to their investors in their funds, right? So putting money into a company that, might do, $250,000 does nothing for them. And so it's important to understand why and what they invest in. Just as when you go out to venture, you go out to angels, what's their expertise? I would see founders that I was working with, I had give money to, and now they're going to go out and get their Series A, as well as they should. And they'd be like, okay, here's the list of VCs I want to talk to. And I'd be like, I am not doing this. Figure out which ones actually are interested in your businesses and are going to create value to be part of your business. And so then I'll make the introduction. But you got to do your own homework. Like, you don't want to talk to a venture firm, which is mostly private equity, that does, consumer product goods, because why would they care if you have a tech company, right? So be thoughtful about who you're talking to on the other side of the table.
100% double tap on being thoughtful about who you're bringing into your company. The capital is there for in many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Who you're really bringing in is the people that you're going to be working with for hopefully a decade plus, and you want the capital plus something else that they and only they can uniquely provide to help accelerate your business. So doing your research upfront and understanding who you're talking to, what they want, but also what they can give you is going to save you a ton of time and be way more valuable than just a spray and pray approach.
Completely.
I could talk to you, Joanne, for hours, but I don't want to hog all of the questions. We have about 5 more minutes. So audience, add your questions to the chat so we can get them to Joanne. I have one more question for you for the audience. What is one thing every founder should and should not do before pitching to an angel like yourself?
One of my pet peeves in your deck, don't talk about an exit. You haven't even entered.
That's amazing.
And you never know who's going to buy a company, right? I mean, I'm in the cannabis business. Who the hell knows who's going to buy these companies? It could end up being, God forbid, the cigarette companies, right? It could be the alcohol companies. It could be Nordstrom's. I mean, you don't know. We are always evolving as businesses and as people and as countries. And so who knows, right? Who knows what you become? A lot of companies that start out as one thing evolve into something else. And so, I just want to hear about what's going to happen and what your big picture is.
How about one green flag that they should definitely do?
I mean, for me, ask a lot of questions, be very curious, and also be tenacious.
Yes, tenacious is incredible. Being curious is incredible. Asking questions. And I think the invitation to ask questions is really important to hear. I think even thinking about myself before I got into the startup world, I was intimidated and still am intimidated by a lot of investors. And the reality is you are a human being and it's okay for you to be asked questions too. Kennedy, thank you for this question from the crowd. Joanne, what types of questions are the right ones to ask?
I think you should ask investors, what are the things you're investing in? What are you looking at? What excited you about this business? What do you think about this business? Have you worked in businesses like this before? I mean, any questions that create a connection to, which is, listen, if you find an investor that you go is in to talk to and, really you're connecting with and ends up that you both fish, I'm just making this up, right? You got to find a connection. And I think I can't express how difficult that is and how important that is, because you don't just want this board person to show up once a month at a meeting. You want to have coffee with this person. You want advice from this person. And so it's important to also find things that you connect about outside of the business.
Yeah, go Knicks.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not a Knicks fan, but I support them. I think they're a great team. I'm curious, even as relationships are so important, but we're in the age of AI, everything is virtual, which is great for accessibility and a million other things. How do you think about balancing in-person versus virtual interactions, especially when you're courting a potential investment company?
I mean, listen, Zoom is fine. I do think it's really important if you can to see someone in physical person. I really do. Shake someone's hand, look them in the eye. I'm running my company right now on Zoom. I'm going to go in for another, I'll go in and out. I do think that having that time is so important because you have conversations you don't think about. You're walking out of the door, shaking someone about coffee, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I noticed something else you said, right? And you can't do that when your Zoom is over.
Yeah.
In terms of valuations, I saw that question. Valuations are literally like this. I think it's more about what percentage of your company do you want to sell creates what it's worth. And it's that simple. I mean, even when I've had founders say to me, someone called me and they're interested in buying my company, right? So first of all, there's a lot of fishing out there. And I would say, hey, what are you thinking? They might not say, but your answer should be vague enough that they understand what the number is to say, wow, I am like so honored or humbled that you would actually, my company is now something that people are looking to buy. I really did not think that I would have any interest in exiting until my company was worth $50 million. And that is basically, but I'm happy to have a conversation. What you basically said is I would sell for $50 million without saying I want $50 million, right? So verbiage is important, and playing that game of walking is very important too.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your candidness with the evaluation example, and I think investors are all about FOMO in many ways too. And so verbiage is important. The way that you present yourself is important. Great question, Rajesh. Stephanie, I think, had a question as well, which we'll probably wrap on. Can you share some success tips and what you were looking from founders, Joanne?
I think all the dots always connect. I'm very interested in people's past and how they're thinking about the future. I mean, that's me. Some people don't even ask any of these questions. They're just focused on business. But to me, if you're getting into bed with someone, you really want to know more about them than this. It's just like, where did you grow up? What did your parents do? What other businesses have you done? I mean, I did a panel where I interviewed 5 female founders, and I said, well, if this doesn't work out, what are you guys going to, what are you going to do? And each of them said, well, let's start another business. Because if you're an entrepreneur, it's very hard to work for someone else. I mean, I know I am absolutely unemployable. I mean, I don't follow any rules, and most entrepreneurs don't. And so what I'm looking for is to see that fire in someone's belly.
Yeah, I mean, rules are a starting point for negotiation, in my opinion. So we don't really need to follow them anyways. We are at time. Joanne, thank you so much for spending your time.
And good luck to everyone out there.
Yeah. Thank you all for joining. Lots of great questions in the chat. We will see you on Monday for the next educational session, and have a great Friday. Have a great weekend.